Hello and welcome to our 2025-2026 FAFSA walkthrough guide. In this video, we will be completing the FAFSA as a student and will be completing the FAFSA as a contributor after accepting the contributor invitation. The 2025-2026 FAFSA is currently open and can be completed at studentaid.gov. Once you're ready to begin, we'll go ahead and click on Start New Form. If you haven't done so already, it will first prompt you to sign in with your FSA ID. Once you're signed in, you'll select whether you're the student or the parent. We'll be completing the FAFSA as a student first, so we'll go ahead and select student and continue on. You will then be shown 4 videos which cover topics such as what is the FAFSA, who are your contributors and how do you invite them, and what comes after. Although you're not required to watch these videos, they do have a lot of good information, so we do want to encourage you to watch through them. Next, you will review the student identity information. The top portion will be automatically imported from your FSA ID, so if you need to make any corrections, you could do so within your FSA ID account settings. Below that is your permanent mailing address. You can make any changes or corrections if necessary. Be sure to only use your permanent mailing address and to not use any temporary mailing addresses such as on-campus student dorms. Once you have verified this information, you can continue on to the next page. Next, you'll enter information regarding your state of legal residence, and you'll enter the month and year in which you became a legal resident of that state. If you're still living in the state you were born in, you'll enter your date of birth for the date you became a legal resident, or if you've moved to the state where you're currently living, you'll enter in the date that you moved. Next, you will provide your consent and your approval to have your information automatically imported from the IRS. This is an extremely important step as this imports all of your tax information, so you no longer have to enter it manually. Once you are presented with this page, you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom and you will approve. Make sure you do approve so that way your tax information can be automatically imported. This page does have a lot of information, so if you are interested, make sure you do read through it. But once you are ready, you could scroll down to the bottom and select approve. After that, your information will be securely imported. Give it a few seconds, and then once your information has been imported, you can continue on to the next page. Next, you'll answer questions regarding your personal circumstances, which will help determine your eligibility for federal aid and will determine whether you are a dependent or an independent student. First, it will ask you for your current student marital status. When you're completing the FAFSA, it's important to complete it as if it is a snapshot of the current date and time in which you are completing it. So if you're single at the time in which you're completing the FAFSA application, go ahead and select that you are currently single. Next, you'll select your college or career plans for the upcoming school year. If you are an incoming freshman, make sure you select first year freshman. Even if you are incoming with dual credits or AP credits, this refers to your first full year on a college campus, so even if you are coming in with credits, you still will select first year freshman. Do be sure to not accidentally select master's, doctorate, or graduate certificate unless that does apply to you. There are different federal financial aid opportunities for graduate students compared to undergraduates, so if you are an undergraduate student, make sure you do properly indicate that. Below that, you will indicate if you will already have a first bachelor's degree at the beginning of the school year. Already having a bachelor's degree may limit the amount of federal financial aid opportunities that are available to you. So if you already do have one, select yes, but if you do not have your first bachelor's degree, do make sure you do not accidentally select yes. If you don't already have a bachelor's, you'll select no and you will continue on. Next, you'll be presented with the student personal circumstances. Be sure to read through each of the different student personal circumstances and check off any that may apply to you. If none of these different student personal circumstances apply to you, you can select none of these apply and you can continue on. You can't select more than one, so do select all that apply. But do keep in mind, if you do check off any of these student personal circumstances, you may be asked to provide your financial aid office with additional documentation that relates to these student personal circumstances. After that, you will be asked the student homelessness question, which asks that if at any time were you unaccompanied or homeless or self-supporting and at risk of homelessness. If you select yes, you will be asked some additional questions, and once again, you may be asked to provide additional documentation to the financial aid office. But if the answer is no and that does not apply to you, you can continue on. You will then be asked the student unusual circumstance question. This question asks you if unusual circumstances prevent you, the student, from contacting their parents, or if contacting their parents would pose a risk to the student. A student may be experiencing unusual circumstances if they left home due to an abusive or threatening environment, if they are abandoned or estranged from their parents, if they have refugee or asylee status and are separated from their parents, or if their parents are displaced in a foreign country, if a student is a victim of human trafficking, or if a student is incarcerated or their parents are incarcerated and contact with their parents would pose a risk to the student, or if the student would otherwise be unable to contact or locate their parents. Once again, these are unusual circumstances that do prevent the student from contacting their parents, so this does not relate to situations such as your parents don't want to provide their information or they're unwilling to assist you with your FAFSA application. If you are experiencing unusual circumstances that do prevent you from getting in contact with your parents, you can select yes, but if this does not apply to you, you will once again select no and continue on. After that, you'll be presented with your dependency status, which will be either independent or dependent. If you are identified as a dependent student, that means you must provide parental or contributor information to your FAFSA. Below that, you'll be asked if you want to apply for a direct unsubsidized loan only. This means you will only be eligible for direct unsubsidized loans, and you will not be eligible for any other type of federal financial aid. You may select yes if your parents are refusing to provide their information on the FAFSA form, but we do want to encourage you to select no so that way you can keep your options for federal financial aid open. If you're a student who's having difficulty getting your parents' information or convincing your parents to assist with your FAFSA application, we recommend you reach out to your financial aid office to see what opportunities or assistance may be available. But when you are presented with this page, it is extremely important that you do select no, so you do not limit yourself to only direct unsubsidized loans. Next, if you are a dependent student, it will ask you questions to determine which parent you need to invite to your FAFSA application. It'll ask you a series of yes/no questions, such as are your parents married to each other? For example, if they are, you'll provide information for both parents. If your parents are not married to each other, it'll ask you additional yes/no questions to determine which parent or parents you need to invite to your FAFSA application. After you go through the yes/no questions, it will tell you in this blue box to provide information for both parents or provide information for one parent only. After you continue, this will take you to the invite page where you can invite your contributors. On the contributor invite page, you must enter information to invite your parents or your contributors. It's extremely important that all of the information entered here in these invite boxes matches exactly with your parent or contributor FSA ID. If your parent or contributor does not already have an FSA ID, it's recommended that they do create one, and then you will enter in the exact same information from their FSA ID on this invite screen. Everything does have to be the exact same except for the email address. The email address does not have to be the same email address your parent used to make their FSA ID, but everything else must match exactly: first name, last name, date of birth, and social security number. If your parent does not have a social security number, you will just check off that box and enter their address instead, but your parent will still need to be invited, and they still will need an FSA ID even if they do not have a social security number. A few things to keep in mind is that if your parents are legally married to each other, the form will tell you to invite both of them to the form. However, if your legally married parents do file joint taxes, you do only have to invite one of them, and it will import the taxes for both of them. If your parents are legally married but file taxes separately, you will have to invite each of them separately. Once you include your parent information in the invite boxes and you ensure all of it matches exact and is correct, you can click send invite. If you are trying to send an invite to a contributor who does not have a social security number, you may encounter some errors, but there are guidance and there is a recommended workaround which you could click on there to review. But once again, once you are ready to invite your parent or your contributor, you can click send invite and then you can continue on. Next, we'll work through the student demographics section. These questions are used for research purposes only and do not affect federal student aid eligibility. So when you're answering these questions, you could answer in the way in which you feel best represented, or you could choose to prefer not to answer. Again, if you don't feel as if any of these options represent you, you could just once again select prefer not to answer, or you could select whichever one you feel best represents you. After that, it will ask you for your student citizenship status, so you'll select the one that once again applies most to you. And then it will ask you for your parent education status. Once again, this does not affect your eligibility for any aid. This is just data collection. So you can once again select the option which is most relative to your situation. After that, it'll ask you if you had a parent killed in the line of duty. If this does apply to you, then you will select yes. If not, you will select no and continue on. Finally, it will ask you for your high school completion status at the beginning of the school year, whether it was a high school diploma, a state recognized equivalent such as the GED, or you were homeschooled. You'll once again select the one that best applies to you. Next, you will enter in your high school information. You will enter in the state as well as the city, and then you could either search or you could type in your high school name as well and search with that. It'll give you a list of options that you could select and move on. If you're not able to find your high school, you do also have the option to add your school manually as well. Once you've added your high school, you are able to continue on with the application. This will have you confirm your high school on the next step, so just make sure the information is accurate. But once again, you can use either the search feature or you can add that information manually. Next, you will answer some questions regarding your finances. Although the majority of your financial information will have been automatically imported from the IRS when you gave your consent earlier in the application, you still will have to answer some additional questions. If the answer to these questions is 0, don't be afraid to put a 0 in the box. You do have to put something in the box. You can't just leave it blank. So if the answer is 0, you can put in a 0 and move on. But do refer to your tax returns to find the correct amount to enter in these boxes, and then you can continue on to the next step. You will answer a few additional questions regarding your assets, such as your current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts, as well as current net worth of investments, including real estate. Once again, do enter in the value that does best represent your current circumstances, but if the current value for something such as your assets is currently 0, don't be afraid to put in a 0. Once again, you do have to enter a value in each box. You can't just leave them blank. But again, if the number that is most accurate and if the number that best represents your situation is 0, you can enter in the 0 and move on. Next, you will select colleges or career schools that you want to add to your FAFSA. You can add up to 20 different schools to your FAFSA, so if you're still considering different institutions, it's important to add as many institutions that you are considering. You don't have to add every school that you are interested or considering right here at this point in time. You can always come back after you've submitted the FAFSA and add or remove additional schools. You can search by the school name or you can search by the federal school code. NMSU's federal school code, for example, is 002657. So if we type in the code and hit search, it will pull up NMSU. It looks like since this is the prototype, NMSU isn't popping up. That's okay, but when you're on this screen, either search for your school by the school name or search by the school code, and then once you find your school, you'll go ahead and select and move on. Once again, NMSU school code is 002657, so if you type that in, you'll be able to find us. This will have you confirm your schools. You could remove them, view more information, or you can continue on, but you do have to add at least one school. Next, you will review your information before continuing to sign your form. You can click on any of the student sections to review the information you have entered, and if you need to go back and make any changes, you can click on that section to be taken back. This will also show you your contributor section, so you can manage your contributor information and you can view the status of your contributor information. Once you've reviewed all of this information and you're ready to continue to sign your FAFSA, you can hit continue, which will bring you to the sign page for your FAFSA application. It's important to read through this page, make sure you understand what you are signing, and then when you are ready, you can check off that you agree to the terms and you can sign and submit your FAFSA. If you are a dependent student who still needs contributor information, you will be presented with this "You're almost there" screen. If you are an independent student or you're a student whose contributor has already given their information, you'll be faced with the "Congratulations" screen because your FAFSA has been fully completed. But if you are still waiting for a contributor to add their information, you will get this "You're almost there" screen, and it will show you the status of their invite. This completes the FAFSA for the student side. If you are a dependent student, your contributor will need to complete their section as well. If a contributor is invited to add their information to a dependent student's FAFSA, they will receive an email which looks something like this. The email will invite them to log in to studentaid.gov and contribute their information to their student's FAFSA. Once the contributor has signed in to studentaid.gov, they'll be given the option to accept or decline the invitation. If you're a contributor and your student has invited you to their FAFSA, you want to select accept invitation, so that way you can share your information and your student can get their FAFSA fully completed. The contributor FAFSA is extremely similar to the student FAFSA. You will first be given this screen with some frequently asked questions. You can read through the information, and when you're ready, you can select continue. Just like with the students, you will be shown 4 videos which explain the FAFSA process. These videos have a lot of good information, and we do want to encourage you to take a watch. But you are not required. If you've watched the videos or you are already familiar with the information, you can click continue and then start the form. Just like with the student side, as a contributor, you will be asked to verify your information. All of this top information will be taken directly from your FSA ID, so if that needs to be changed, you can do so in your account settings. And then you will be asked to verify or update your permanent mailing address as well. Next, you'll be tasked with providing consent and approval to have your information automatically imported from the IRS. This is an extremely important step as it will automatically transfer over all of your tax information. So make sure you read through, scroll down to the bottom, and select approve. It will take a couple seconds, securely import your information, and then when you are ready to go, you will continue. Even if you haven't filed taxes or even if you don't have tax returns with the IRS, it still is important to approve and provide consent and continue. Even if there's not anything for the system to pull through, it's important to still run that process. So always approve to have your information pulled over, even if there isn't information to not be pulled over. For example, if you're a parent who doesn't have a social security number or you don't file taxes, still do approve and consent to have that pulled over, and you'll just continue through. If there's information to be pulled through, it'll be pulled through. If not, it won't, but letting the process run either way will be beneficial. Next, parents will answer questions regarding their demographics. It's important to keep in mind that these are the exact same questions that the student was asked. So when the student did their section, it's important that they answered these demographic questions relating to them. Just like when the parent or contributor is doing this section, they will want to answer these questions relating to them as the parent or as the contributor. Once again, when you're answering these questions, think of it as a snapshot of time. So answer these questions as they relate to that point in time in which you are filling out the FAFSA. Don't answer them based off of how things are going to be in the future, or don't answer based off of how things have been in the past. Answer based off of how things are that day, then, and there. Continuing on with the parent demographics, you will enter in the parent state of legal residence. And then you will move on to parent finances. Although the majority of your financial information will be automatically imported from the IRS since you provided consent and approval earlier, there are still some additional financial questions that you will have to answer. First, you will be asked if you receive any federal benefits. Be sure to read through the different options and check off any that may apply. Next, it will ask you about your family size, specifically if your family size is different from the number of individuals claimed on your most recent tax return. If the answer is no, you'll just select no and continue. If you're not sure what the family size is, you could select yes, and it will tell you what the size reported was, and then you could enter in any additional children or dependents if you need to. So make sure you enter in your family size and you will continue. This question is exclusive to the contributor side of the FAFSA, and students do not get asked this question, only parents and contributors. You will also be asked the number in college. Once again, this is a question exclusive to the parent or contributor side of the FAFSA. But if you are filling this out for your student who is in college, make sure you do include them in college. You don't include yourself if you are the parent. You just include the number of your children or dependents who are currently in college. Continuing on, you'll answer some additional questions relating to your tax return information. Be sure to refer to your tax return so you may enter in the most accurate value. If the answer is 0 or the question does not apply, you can enter in 0 and you can move on, but you must answer each of the questions and you must enter in a value in each of the boxes. You will also be asked some additional questions, including the annual child support received, and then you will be asked those same asset questions that the student was asked. Once again, enter in the value that most represents your current situation. If that number is 0, you can enter in a 0 and move on. Next, you'll have a chance to review your FAFSA responses before you continue on to sign and submit. You can click on the different sections to review the information you have entered, and if you need to jump back and make any changes, you could click on the blue hyperlinked text to hop back. Once you have reviewed this information and you're ready to move on, you can click continue, and then this will have you sign and submit the FAFSA form. Do be sure to read through these information so you know what you're agreeing to, and then you can check off that you agree and you can sign and submit. If your student has already completed their section, this will complete their FAFSA form. You will get that congratulations notice up at the top with the hot air balloons. Both the student and their contributor do have to do the FAFSA application. So once again, if the student has already completed their section, once you complete your section as the parent or as a contributor, that will fully complete their FAFSA application. Once students have finished their FAFSA, we encourage them to keep an eye on their associated email so that way they could receive any additional updates or information. This wraps up our 2025-2026 FAFSA walkthrough guide. For additional information, visit our financial aid website at fa.nmsu.edu. Thanks for watching. Go Aggies!